As most of you already know, most of my videos I do off of the top of my head. I don't have any notes prepared. I don't have any. I don't rehearse anything. You know, I speak as I go. Earlier on, when I started off, like in the beginning, I had some notes, but I didn't even really rely on that. As you will see in my videos, I rarely consulted my notes. But I feel like if a person is well educated enough in their subject, they shouldn't need notes, as my brother Robert says. My brother Robert in the faith, because I don't have any brothers actually. So let's begin. It may not be such a long time away from Armageddon. And how we see this is by looking at history and knowing that prophecies are always two folds and that history repeats itself. But to understand this, you must understand the importance of African Americans and their relationship with Israel. But not just African Americans, but Haitians, Jamaicans, right? It was after the 30th year, after the 400th year, that they were freed from slavery. It is going to be after the 30th year of the African Americans' 400th year that Armageddon will come, or the 10 plagues, right? AKA Armageddon will come, and they will be going to the promised land. So, but to show you how much sense this makes right off the top, notice that Israel became a nation. Israel, actual Israel, right? The country, Israel, became a state and was recognized as a state in the year 1948. But from 1948 to 2019, how many years is that? 70. African Americans have been slaves in Egypt, aka America, for 400 years as of 2019. So much so that Ghana called it the year of return, right? And that's exactly 400 years. So African Americans reached 2019 for the 400th year mark of slavery or servitude. And then the nation Israel reached their 70th year in 2019. As for the times for the total amount of time that they've been recognized as a state. Now, if you don't know the Bible, let me help you appreciate the number 70. Abraham, 70 years old. Israel was sent into slavery under the Babylonian rule for 70 years. 70, the number 7, is a very important number. 70 is a very important number. 400 is also a very important number. So let me convince you first that the African Americans and anyone who partook in the Atlantic slave trade are part of the Hebrews. They are not the complete number of the Hebrews, but they are definitely part of the Hebrews. In fact, they may be more Jews. They may be more of Judah than the Ashkenazi Jews in Israel right now. But I won't go into that. I'm just going to prove to you that they are definitely Hebrews in the language, in the culture, and in prophecy. This scripture here, Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. I'm going to try to keep this real quick. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. Jehovah is making a covenant with the Hebrews. And he's telling them that if they deviate from the laws and statutes that he's put on them, he will send them back to Egypt by means of ships. Okay? It says, Jehovah will send you back in ships to Egypt on a journey I said you will never make again. There you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you. This is foreshadowing the Atlantic slave trade. Now keep this in mind. This is something you really need to know, and do your research on this. Don't just take my word for it. In the history of mankind, okay, nobody has been taken by ships to slavery except those involved in the Atlantic slave trade. Remember that, mark it, do your research, test it out. In the history of mankind, no group of people have been taken by means of ships to slavery except those involved in the Atlantic slave trade. And no one has been taken to Egypt, literal land of Egypt, by means of ships to become slaves. Nobody. So this prophecy is not talking about the literal land of Egypt. It is talking about America. Even Bible scholars agree that in prophecy, America is Egypt. When God prophesies about Egypt concerning the last days, he isn't speaking of the actual land of Egypt, because Egypt does not exist in its world power state like it did before. But Egypt, in the time that the Hebrews were slaves, Egypt was a world power. In the time that African Americans are slaves in Egypt, aka America, America is a world power. America and Britain, Great Britain, are the two Anglo world powers of today's age. Okay, no one can rival America in war. Nobody. It won't be possible. Just based on the amount of people in America. America is literally 50 countries. It's not really states, it's 50 countries. More than 50 countries, really, plus America's allies. So America cannot be rivaled. America is a world power. But just like Egypt was untouchable in those days at the time that the Hebrews were slaves, America is untouchable today. And also, look at Washington, D.C., and all the Egyptian artifacts and monuments that are there. Look on your dollar bill and look at the pyramid. I don't need to go any further. Do you know how fascinated America is with pyramids and Egyptology, if you want to call it that? America is Egypt. And not only have no other people been taken, so Egypt also in the Bible means slavery, in case you didn't know. So Egypt means slavery, 1. Egypt represents a world power of its time, 2. And America is fascinated with Egypt, 3. And a group of people have been taken as slaves to this land of America to become slaves. So they are literally in Egypt because Egypt means slaves, slavery. And they are literally in Egypt because this place, this country is a world power, right? And it literally is Egypt because this world power is fascinated with Egyptology. Okay, so all of these help you to see the significance of these African Americans, but not just African Americans. We're talking about America, but really we're talking about those from the Caribbeans who were taken as slaves. I mean, who were brought there as slaves. So the Jamaicans, right? Jamaica, right? Jamaica, meaning Jamaica, meaning it seems like we're stuck here. I don't know how else to explain that, but that's what it means in the native tongue. Jamaica, we're stuck here. I speak Fanti and Twi, so I understand what that means. The Haitians, they're also from West Africa, Nigeria and Ghana specifically, right? Now, also to help you to understand something, in Ghana, the name for I made a video on this already, but I want to touch on it a little bit. The Ghanaians speak Hebrew. Okay, I don't know how else to say it. The Ghanaians speak Hebrew, and there are many words in the Twi language and in Fanti that sounds Hebraic. And certain times when I'm doing my research, I would see Hebrew words, and I would say, hold up, isn't that how it's said in Fanti or in Twi? Right. So, for example, the latest one that I found was the name for Eve. In Hebrew, check this out. In Hebrew, they say the name for Eve is Hava, right? Hava. But you would have Hebrew scholars, Israeli scholars in Israel, who will tell you that the correct pronunciation is not Hava because there was no V in the original Hebrew language, and that V was borrowed from the Germans, right? So when you say Yehovah, or when you say Yahweh, the V is really a W. The Israeli scholars will tell you this. So the V is a W. And in all the other dialects around the land of Israel that speak the Semitic tones, there is no V. So that alone tells you that there was no V, right? So it's not Jehovah, it's Yehovah. It's not Jehovah, it's Jehovah, right? Jehovah is the name of God. But remember, there is a deviousness by the devil to get you to forget your God's name. But there is no V, it's a W. So it's not Hava. Eve's name is not Hava, it's Hawa, right? It's Hawa. So the Israeli scholars are admitting that it's not Hava, but it's Hawa. And it's not Jehovah, but it's Jehovah, right? But check this out. In Ghana, the name for Eve is Hawa. So here it is, the Israelis think it's Hava, but their scholars are telling them that it's not Hava, it's Hawa, right? But in Ghana, they already know it's Hawa, and they call Eve as Hawa. So they have and they call God as Yehovah. They don't call him Jehovah, they call him Yehovah. They don't call him Jehovah, they call him Yehovah. Also in Ghana, we say Abba. Abba. Abba in Hebrew means father. And in Ghana, when we say Abba, it's like, oh my God, like what just happened? Like it's like you're calling God, but in a distressful way of calling God. Like so a big accident just happened and you're saying Abba. You know, like so you're saying God, you're calling on God, but you're saying Abba. Abba means father, and Abba is another term for God with a capital F as in father, right? We say Yahweh, Yah, hallelujah, right? Yahweh is another way we call God. Yahweh meaning my God. Yahweh, my God. We also say Oyankopon Yah. Oyankopon Yah is Hebrew. Okay? We also say, but okay, let me end it there. So these people that are speaking Hebrew in Ghana were taken to slavery, aka Egypt, aka America, to become slaves in the land of Egypt. Okay, now that should be enough of convincing for you to do your own research to see whether in fact it is true that these people are Hebrews. And again, when God punishes the Haitians, like he said, he will punish his people with a strict punishment so that they convert from their pagan and heathenistic ways. The Haitians we know are very, very into voodoo and witchcraft and paganism, right? Which is why whenever there's a punishment on the Haitians, it never touches the Dominicans, even though they are on the same island. Because God said he knows how to make a distinction between his people and the other people. When he brought punishment upon the Egyptians, he knew how to distinguish his own people from the Egyptians so that the plagues didn't touch the Hebrews. So the first two plagues affected the Hebrews, but after that, it did not touch the Hebrews. So Haitians continue getting these natural disaster attacks, but nothing happens to the Dominican Republic, even though they're on the same islands. Now, you think that's a pure coincidence, or do you not see that that's God punishing his people to turn back from their heathenistic ways? New Orleans, before Hurricane Katrina, which is basically, you could say, the biggest hurricane that hit America, before Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, now mind you, New Orleans was a heavy concentration of the slaves who were brought here from West Africa, were dropped in New Orleans. So God's people are heavily concentrated in New Orleans. The year before Hurricane Katrina came, in New Orleans was the highest murder rate ever in America's history, concentrated in that land of New Orleans. Now, obviously, you see that this is the devil and the demons causing God's people to sin, a great sin against God, because it is happening only in New Orleans, a place where the Hebrews were dropped off. You see time and time and again how the devil is able to influence God's people to sin against him, where God would have to bring up great punishment upon them. So Hurricane Katrina, again, was no coincidence. It is an act and a hand of God punishing his people. Okay, again, do your own research. But this video isn't about that. This video is trying to show you the comparison between history and today, and how we can have an idea of the time period of when Armageddon, aka the 10 plagues, will come upon Egypt. Because Egypt is America, right? Now, even though I'm talking about America, this obviously involves the whole world. Okay, anything that affected Egypt literally affected the whole world. When there was a famine in the whole world, at the time of Joseph, this was why God sent Joseph to Egypt to become Zephaniah for the sake of preserving humans around the world. God said this. So when there was a famine in the world, there was only cereal and bread and food in Egypt, because Zephaniah, Joseph, had the vision and made and stored a lot of food for the world. So everybody came to Egypt to take food, right? Whatever happens in Egypt affects the whole world. Whatever happens in America affects the whole world. So in Egypt, the Bible story, Egypt, God told, and mind you, God's people in Egypt was a prophecy. God did tell Abraham, and remember, prophecies are twofold. So I have to remind you that that was a prophecy, so that you know is that it's in twofolds. That 400-year slavery is not just going to happen one time; it's going to happen 2 times, and it has happened as of 2019. But God told Abraham that your seed will be foreigners in a foreign land and will be slaves for 400 years, 4 generations, right? 400 years. So, matter of fact, let me take you to that scripture. Genesis 15:13. Then Jehovah said to Abraham, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. Okay? They will be enslaved and mistreated there. And here it is. God is saying he will send his people back to Egypt, and they will be mistreated there. They will be slaves. They will be they will sell themselves to as male and female slaves, but no one will buy them, right? So in the Bible they were slaves for 400 years, but the Bible said that they did not leave Egypt until the 430th year. They did not leave Egypt until the 430th year. So, present day America, present day Egypt, present day slavery of God's people, the African Americans, who speak Hebrew actually. But of course, African Americans, Haitians, Jamaicans, they don't know how to speak their native tongue. As God said, they will forget their identity. They will forget they will forget their God, and they will serve foreign gods, gods whom their forefathers never knew. So African Americans have no culture. They don't know their name. They don't have their Hebraic names anymore. They don't speak their mother tongue anymore. They don't know who their God is anymore. And God said he will bring all sorts of diseases upon them. High blood pressure, AIDS, all that, you name it. It afflicts the African Americans. And they are the poorest among those here in Egypt, America. So as of 2019 is the 400th year of their servitude in the foreign land. That includes the Haitians, even though they're not in America, but that includes the Haitians and all those who were scattered around the world by the slave trade. As God said, he will scatter his people all around the world. Okay? So 400 years, 2019. So much so that Ghana called it or coined it the year of return, right? Why did Ghana wait for the 400th year of all marks? They wait for the 400th year to mark it as the year of return for the African Americans to come back to Ghana. Why is that? Don't you see the similarities between the 400-year slavery in Egypt and the year of return back to Ghana for African Americans? Is that just a coincidence? 400, just a coincidence? And also, Israel reaches its 70th year on 2019. The same year that is the year of return for the African Americans is the same year that the actual land of Israel had become a state for 70 years. And so, basically, if you think about it, we got 30 more years until the 10 plagues hits. We got 30 more years until the 10 plagues hits. History repeats itself. $30 more years. But what is going to kick it off to help you see the sign that's going to help you see that, yes, this is going to begin the last days, is when the Pope, the head of the wild beast, the headpiece of the wild beast, goes to Israel. Now let me remind you, the Pope has never been to Israel. Understand that. From what I've researched, the Pope has never been to Israel. But Christ said, when you see the disgusting thing standing where it ought not to be, then let those in Judea begin fleeing to the mountains. Again, this is a prophecy. But again, prophecies are twofold. Okay? So, oh, look at that. Something just came to me. Now, when Christ said the disgusting thing standing where it ought not to be comes, let those... Now, when Christ was talking about the disgusting thing, he was talking about the Romans. He was talking about the Romans. Okay? And so when the Romans came to Jerusalem to... check this out. When the Romans came to Jerusalem, they left, right? So that was a sign for the people in Judea to begin fleeing to the mountains. And those who remembered Christ's prophecy listened and they left. And then the Romans came back again, and after that, they put a wedge around Jerusalem, and no one could leave, and a lot of people were killed on that day or during that time. That's the disgusting thing. We all know the disgusting thing is wrong. That's not even an argument. Okay, the disgusting thing is wrong. Now, so Rome came to Israel the first time before, but the Pope has never been to Israel. So the disgusting thing is the Pope. We know that. He is going to come to Israel one day. He has not come yet. But when he does come, just like Romans came to Jerusalem the first time, when the Romans, but this time there is no Roman army, it's just the Pope, right? And the Pope just last week went to Iran, was it? Right? He went to Iran. Soon he's going to set his gaze to Israel. He's going to go to Israel. When he goes to Israel, that's the Roman Catholic Church, the Roman Empire, the disgusting thing going into Jerusalem. It's the disgusting thing standing in a place where it ought not to be. Let that be a sign for those in Judea, Israel, to know that the last days has begun. You see? And Christ said, for them will be a time that will be a time of distress that has never occurred before, nor will ever occur again. When Christ said that, you think that applied to the time when the Romans came, right? He's talking about that, yes. But that's not the last days, obviously. And that's not a time period that has happened that will never happen again. No. I mean, before Armageddon comes has to be a distress that has never occurred ever before. So that couldn't have been the time that Christ was talking about. He's talking about he's speaking of two prophetic terms. As we know, prophecy is always twofold. We should know this. Prophecy is always twofold. We know that. So he's speaking of the last days, the Great Tribulation. And that the Great Tribulation will begin when the disgusting thing comes to Rome, when the Pope comes to Rome. Also, Christ said, when at the time when they are speaking peace, 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 then sudden destruction will come upon them. Again, mark of the last days, the Great Tribulation. When the Pope went to Iran, his message was what? Peace, peace, peace. That ain't no coincidence, people. When he goes to Israel, his message is going to be peace, peace, peace. Again, Christ says, when you hear them saying peace, 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 then sudden destruction will befall them. America is going to collapse. That's probably when the economy is going to collapse. Okay? Whatever happens in America affects the whole world. So everything is going to happen together, and it's going to happen in one generation. This is our generation. The 400th year is this generation. The 70th year is this generation. Okay, let me get back to topic. So the Pope will go to Israel, and that will be the disgusting thing standing where it ought not to be. One, his message is going to be peace. And when peace, now when he goes to Israel, the disgusting thing standing where it ought not to be. Okay, they let those in Judea begin fleeing to the mountains. And at that time will be a distress that has never occurred, nor will ever occur again. The Great Tribulation, right? That's one. Two, Christ says, when the message is peace. Well, the Pope was just in Iran. His message is peace. When he goes to Israel, his message is going to be peace. Then sudden destruction will befall them. You see how the prophecies align? Again, the 400th year mark was, I just looked at my time, 10:37. That's my number, by the way. 3 and 7 makes 10. 3, 7 is 777. 10 is complete. Y'all get the point, but it's 10:37. But anyway, that's off topic. So, all of that combined with the fact that 2019 was a year of return, 400th year mark, and the 70th year of Israel becoming a nation. All that combined with the Pope going back to Israel. You see all of that? Okay. Now, I still believe Trump has a role, but don't think he ain't working. But I still believe God is using him for a purpose, and he's just working behind the shadows so that he can complete the work while y'all think he's asleep. But what's the other thing I wanted to say? Y'all remember I told y'all about the 70th mark, that something just came to my head? 70th year mark, that something just came to my head? In what year did the disgusting thing, the Roman army, come and surround Jerusalem? In what year? Was it not 70 AD? 70, the year 70 AD. You see the importance of the number 70? That's the thing that just came to my head that I was telling you about. 70 AD was the time that the Romans, the disgusting thing, came and stood in Jerusalem. As of 2019 was the 70th year that Israel became a nation. And already the Pope has started to make his trail towards close to Israel. Already he was in Iran talking about peace. And if he's in Iran talking about peace, who has Iran had beef with always? Was it not Israel? So if his message to Iran is peace, then he's obviously going to go to Israel too to talk about peace. And it's the 70th year already. And the disgusting thing came to Israel in 70 AD. Look at that. Look at that. Let me double check. 70 AD Roman army. I don't even know what I'm typing. Let's see if I believe it was 70 AD. Yes, the siege of Jerusalem in the year 70 CE was the decisive event of the First Jewish-Roman War. Look at that, 70 AD. I just told you about the importance of the year 70. So that just happened right in front of y'all eyes. As of 2019, I'm gonna repeat it again. 70th year mark for Israel becoming for Israel being a nation state or a nation, whatever, right? 2019, 400th year of servitude for the African Americans, the Haitians and the Jamaicans and all that, right? Even though Haiti won their independence and all that, and obviously the Civil War, civil rights and all that stuff, but still, the 400th year is still an application, so much so that Ghana coined it the year of return. And 70 is important, and the 70 AD was when Rome, the disgusting thing, came to Israel. 2019 was the 70th year, and now the Pope is trying to go to Israel to talk about peace. And when peace comes, sudden destruction. Sudden destruction. The economy is going to collapse. When the Pope goes to Israel, that's when the economy is going to collapse. That's going to be the sign that we literally have less than 30 years until the 10 plagues hits Armageddon. I mean, until the 10 plagues hits America or the world, aka Armageddon. So now, call me crazy, but that's just what I came up with off the top of my head. So let's see what happens. Okay, I'm outside now, and I listened back to the video that I just made that y'all just listened to, and I realized, man, I was talking too fast. Some of y'all are probably watching this, probably trying to keep all the puzzles together. So let me go over it again real quick, but in a decisive way where you could all put the pieces together. Prophecies are twofolds, as I've proven to you guys in this video already. In a way, hopefully I've proven that to you guys. But first, it begins with the prophecy that God made to Abraham. His seed will be slaves in a foreign land, and they'll be in distress for 400 years. And then God sends Moses to rescue them. Armageddon, aka the 10 plagues, comes upon Egypt. And it's not until 30 years after the 400-year mark that they leave Egypt. So they are in Egypt for 400 years, and that's where that's where the mark begins. And then 30 years after that, they leave Egypt. Okay. Fast forward to today. God's people has been taken to Egypt, America. They have been slaves for 400 years. Okay, so we are using the African Americans or the Atlantic slave trade as the mark to help us to understand when Armageddon may possibly come. So as of 2019, African Americans have been in the land of Egypt for 400 years. If we follow the Bible chronology, that means there are 30 more years left, right? Okay. But coincidentally, 2019 is not just the 400th year that African Americans have, or the Atlantic slave trade, took place. But Israel has been a nation for 70 years up until 2019. Call that a coincidence, but obviously it is not a coincidence. So that's 70 years. That means, but now because the 400th year is on 2019, that means there's 30 more years, right? If we're to follow the same Bible chronology, that's 30 more years. So that's 2019 plus 30 more years, right? We have that time frame, or the generation for that time frame. Okay. Israel has reached 70 years of 2019. That's 30. So that's 30 more years left, right? But 70 plus 30 makes 100, right? So that's another thing you could add to that. That's not a coincidence, right? They reached 70 years as of 2019. African Americans reached 400 years as of 2019. The Israelites were freed from slavery after 30 years after that. 30 years after 70 is 100. Everything just makes perfect sense. Okay. Now, 70 AD was when Jerusalem was attacked by Rome. And Christ gave a prophecy that Jerusalem would be attacked by Rome when the disgusting thing comes, right? So when Christ gave that prophecy, many people didn't believe it. Like, they shoved it off. Those who did believe, when the Roman army came, they remembered the prophecy of Christ and they left. So they were spared. But those that didn't pay attention, to the prophecy, they stayed and they were attacked. Their women were raped. The men were killed, right? They went hungry. Some ate their children. It was crazy. That happened in 70 AD. 70 is an important number. But Christ said, when the disgusting thing comes, let those in Judea flee to the mountains. The disgusting thing was Rome. We know that for a fact now because Rome was the one who came and attacked Jerusalem in 70 AD. So the disgusting thing has to be Rome, because Rome was the only one who came to attack Jerusalem after Christ said that the disgusting thing will come and attack Jerusalem. So Rome was obviously the disgusting thing. So since prophecies are twofold, Rome would come again to attack Jerusalem. It's going to happen again. But there is no Roman army. It is just the Roman Catholic Church. So now it will be like a symbolic attack, right? And the distress, Christ said that when they come, it'll be a distress that has never occurred, nor will ever occur again. Now, if Christ is talking about that event in 70 AD, it has to be twofold, because if it's only going to happen at that time in 70 AD that has already passed, then that means that what happened at that time in 70 AD was the worst that could have ever happened, because it was the worst that would happen and would never happen again. But obviously we know that that's not the case, because we know that right before Armageddon would be a time of distress that has never occurred before and never would occur again. So it has to be twofold. He couldn't have been just talking about 70 AD. He's talking about a future time even after 70 AD, because prophecies are twofold. You understand? So since Rome is not an army anymore, it's not a world power anymore, but we know the Roman Catholic Church is, and the Pope is the third most influential and most powerful entity in the world, because we are talking about since Rome is not a world power anymore, the Pope is the third most influential entity in the world, because the first and the second are the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and right. But after the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, the Pope has an extreme amount of power over what goes on in the world. Don't let that innocent, look. He don't even look innocent to me. He looks extremely demonic, if you ask me. But don't let that look fool you. He's putting in work, okay? He's the head figure of the Roman Catholic Church. This is the disgusting thing. The Roman Catholic Church is extremely disgusting in the eyes of God. If you don't know that, I don't know what you've been doing. But the Roman Catholic Church is extremely disgusting and polluted in the eyes of God. And they are the disgusting thing. Now, just as Rome attacked Jerusalem in 70 AD, the Roman Catholic Church, or the headpiece of Rome, is going to go to Jerusalem. And based on my research, he has never been to Jerusalem. Isn't that something? So basically, the fact that he's never been to Jerusalem tells you that when he does go, it's going to be a pivotal point in mankind's history, as far as God and the Bible is concerned. Because as far as God and the Bible is concerned, Israel and Jerusalem are the most important place, basically. So anyone who goes there, someone as important or as influential, not important, right, but as influential as the Pope, to go to Jerusalem is a very pivotal point in human history. Okay, so the Pope will go to Rome. But now, here's the point. Christ said that, he said two things. He said the disgusting thing going to Jerusalem, where it's not supposed to be, right? That's one. Also, he says, when the message is peace, 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 then sudden destruction or a collapse of the world would happen. Now, the collapse of the world can only happen with the economy, really. That's what could really put things into war, right? Cause war to start, and people will not have jobs, and food shortages, right? And eventually diseases and things like that. All of that follows the pattern, and then death, right? And then Armageddon. So if Rome is going to go to Jerusalem, and he's very close, he's right by the border, and his message is peace, Don't you see how everything aligns together? So I mean, hopefully you guys understand it again. But I mean, if y'all don't understand it, I'm sorry, but I've tried to explain it. And y'all already know that the Roman Catholic Church is the wild beast. I made a video on that already, just like last week. So look for that video. Also, in that video, I just went off the top of my head why I strongly believe that the Roman Catholic Church is the wild beast, and they said that their mark of authority is Sunday worship. Even though the Sabbath is supposed to be on Saturday, they say, yeah, we know Saturday is supposed to be the Sabbath, but we have the right to change the day to Sunday, and it is our mark of authority. So if the Roman Catholic Church is the wild beast, the empire of false religion, Babylon the Great, if they are the empire of false religion, if they are the wild beast, then what is the mark of the beast? Their mark of authority is Sunday worship. So the mark of the beast must be Sunday worship. And the Pope wants to organize a system with the world where everyone would rest on a specific day so that the environment could breathe from all the toxins in the air. So they're going to try and limit the pollution in the air on one day. And everybody got to stay home. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be on a Sunday because they worship the sun. Look, type in Roman Catholic Church and the sun, and you're going to see all the artifacts they have of the sun and how they worship the sun. Sunday. Okay, and it's their mark of authority. So they're going to try to, limit greenhouse gas emissions, right? Which is going to lead into the food shortages prophesied in the Bible. Food shortages and hunger and pestilence. When people starve, they have diseases, right? So they're gonna shut down all the trucks that emit greenhouse gases. Now, if they're gonna do that, how are you gonna get your food in the markets? That is a systemized way for them to begin to limit the population of the world by causing hunger. Because we know that's part of their agenda, globalization, right? To limit the population of the world. So this is all the decisive plan by the elites. Call them the Illuminati or Freemasons, whatever you want to call them, but it's an agenda by the elites, the 1%ers, who are governed by the devil. And the devil will only choose the sickest people in the world to have all the power so that they will do his bidding. He won't pick a sane person. He will pick the sickest, the most conniving, the most wicked, the most evil, and the most disgusting people to be at the top of the world. That's why all this pedophilia thing goes on, and it's all kept under control because the 1%ers rule the world. They are sick people because they do the devil's bidding, and that is why they are on the top of the world, because they do the devil's bidding. But let me end it there. Peace, y'all.